Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. I'm Daisy Puya, the lead of communication at Nisarg Foundation. Nisarg Foundation is a 501c3 registered non-profit organization based out of California in the United States. And today we are presenting a climate webinar on the theme Conservation of Biodiversity and Restoration of Ecology, presented by Nisarg Foundation in collaboration of Mumbai Sustainability Centre. Before we proceed, I'd like to request everyone, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type it down in the chat box. Our presenters will surely get back to you with the answers at the end of the sessions as we will proceed with the Q&A round. Having said that, I'd like to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is Dr. Avinash Adsul. He's an assistant professor in the Department of Botany for more than 5 years in Gokhale Education Society's Arts, Commerce and Science College in Jawhar. He was awarded the Doctor of Philosophy in 2015 and his field of specialization includes ecology and angiosperm taxonomy. He has been actively guiding projects such as the Jawhar Ecology Centre Project, etc., which works towards the conservation and documentation of the forest ecology in Jawhar. Our second speaker is Mr. Rishi Agarwal. He is the co-founder of Nisarg Foundation and the founder of Mumbai Sustainability Centre. He has been closely involved with environmental conservation activities for over 2 decades as an environmental activist, saving large urban green areas, waste management, sustainable urbanization have been close areas of work. So having said that, I think we are all ready to present and invite our first guest speaker, which is Dr. Avinash Adsul. So Dr. Avinash Adsul, I invite you to the stage.
Thank you, Daisy, for short and sweet introduction of us. Thank you for inviting me as a speaker, as a resource person in such webinar. So today we will discuss about conservation of biodiversity and restoration of ecology. Firstly, I will let you know this image is of a palace from Jawhar. Jawhar was a princely state. We have our king, so this is princely state. Many people are interested or willing to contribute in conservation, but they don't know or they have to ask themselves such or some basic questions like what to conserve, why to conserve, when to conserve, and where to conserve. Just digging a pit and planting any tree from a local nursery is not a conservation. We should keenly know, we should know that what we are planting, whether it will adversely affect our ecosystem or whether it will contribute or enrich our ecosystem. So before taking any consultation, without any consultation of expert, we should not plant any tree, roadside trees, and we should not furthermore disturb our ecosystem. So firstly, we should know what to conserve. Why to conserve? Second question is basic question, why to conserve? Because biodiversity, a simple answer of this question is for survival of human race for longer period. We should conserve each and every species on planet Earth. When to conserve? We are already late. We should about this before 2 decades or prior to that also. Now already we are late. Where to conserve? It should be conserved in its own home. You cannot take it somewhere and put it and conserve it. So with this question, I will start my presentation. Some animations are there. Why we need biodiversity? As I told you, for survival of human race on planet Earth for longer period, we need to conserve each and every species of this planet. Then and then only we can sustain ourselves. So biodiversity, yet there are much more species which are awaited for their discoveries. I'm just small taxonomist working in since last 8-10 years, and I have described 4 new species to science. 4 new species to science. So you can guess there are more yet to be yet to be discovered, yet to be reported. We can go realization of that. There are several wild relatives of crop plants. There are several umbrella species. There are several keystone species which are to be conserved. So we conserve our biodiversity. Ecosystem is aware, and every species is like a one thread breakdown. This will create on uh, adjoining thread, and which will finally collapse entire web of ecology. So we have to conserve each and every species on planet Earth. Then what are the threats of biodiversity, and why we are talking about conservation of biodiversity? This is the era of mass extinction. We are losing a single species at every species are getting extinct. Why this is happening? Because of anthropological activities. We are constructing dams and pools and all. Here, overexploitation is a major concern in destruction of biodiversity. Our people, they don't know farming technique, and they just chop down every tree. They trim every year trees and they burn it for such rab and all. So because of overexploitation of natural resources, we are losing our diversity. Then habitat loss is also a major concern. Then here in zoom farming, agriculture encroachment, every year now forest department, they have allotted forest land for agriculture. They are converting forest land for agriculture for a lease period of 5-10 years or something like that. So because of agriculture encroachment also, we are losing our biodiversity. And here in Jawhar, we are facing lack of awareness. Our people are not knowing much about biodiversity. They are not bothering about biodiversity. So this is challenge for our society. We should now just we will talk about little things about diversity and all, and we will move towards main presentation. So before conservation, we should know what type of biodiversity is there. So how can we measure biodiversity? There are 3 levels of biodiversity. Genetic diversity means diversity within species, diversity of genes, diversity of species. So this is also called as taxonomical diversity, which means this is second level of biodiversity, which means number of species in a particular area or particular ecosystem. It's called as a species level diversity. And third, this is major category of biodiversity is ecosystem diversity, which means diversity within habitats. Several types of habitats are there. So this slide shows you diversity, genetic diversity. A single variety, Canis domesticus variety familiaris, it shows more than 200 various breeds. Dogs, this is domesticated dog. There are more than 200 breeds are there. So this is a genetic diversity. Within the species, you can see half-foot dog up to 4 or 5 foot dog, fit dog. So from pug to Great Dane, there is large more diversity. These are beans. You must have seen diversity of seed coat in beans. Several beans are there. So this is, I wanted to convey you that how genetic diversity is. This is one genus called as Chlorophytum. You can see various types of flowers are there. Diversity of flowers within species. This is called as genetic diversity. Second type of diversity is number of different species in particular area or a particular community, particular ecosystem. This picture shows various flowers of a family Fabaceae from Jawhar, an adjoining area. So This is what a species diversity. And third level of diversity is ecosystem diversity. This is a large level of diversity where you can see some solar forests are there, forest ecosystem, some grasslands, some ponds, poodles, seasonal streams, rivers, riparian vegetation, mangrove sites are there. So these are various ecosystem, and diversity of ecosystem is the third level of diversity. Then how to conserve this biodiversity? There are two major ways, as you must be knowing all these ways, but uh, there are two ways: in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. In situ conservation means conservation at its own home, and ex situ conservation is away from the home. So in situ conservation, we can declare some protected areas like biosphere reserve, tiger reserve, national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, and all. These things are not in our hand. These are dealt by some higher authorities, government policymakers, and all. But we can work on these areas like sacred groves and sacred lakes. As Jawhar is a tribal area, here we have several sacred groves. Devarais are there, where people they are protecting a small area, small plants on the name of God. So we can locate such sacred groves. We can document the diversity of sacred groves, and we can enrich the diversity of sacred groves, which will be there as it is for longer period on the name of God. And there are sacred lakes also. We have one sacred lake. I have told or I have shown it to Rishi sir. Sacred lake, that is Zamsar Lake. It is rich in biodiversity. You can right now there is several flowerings of Nimbi and Nilumbo. Lotus is flowering over there now, and it is conserved over there due to a god, Narayan Dev. There is a god Narayan Dev. Because of him, that lake is conserved as it is. So we can enrich such lakes with adding some indigenous, native, endemic, aquatic plants over there, and we can conserve aquatic biodiversity in such sacred lakes and sacred groves also. On the other hand, in ex situ conservation, we can declare some sacred plants. We can enrich our home gardens. We can develop botanical gardens, zoos, aquariums, seed banks, field gene banks, cryopreservation, and we can restore. We can conduct some program for restoration of species, where some priority list should be made, which plant should be conserved, and we can propagate such plant and restore it or reintroduce it in its native habitat. These are some conservation efforts made by me. So this is already published. A research paper is there on this. This is a herbaceous plant called as Chiropracia Monroe. It was described in 2006 by Professor Yasar Yadav from Shivaji University, Kolhapur. It is a critically endangered species, very rare. It is named after late Professor H.Y. Mohan Ram. He was eminent professor in botany in Delhi University, and the species is restricted to its type locality. Type locality means from where it was collected first by authors who described it. So this species is restricted to just on type locality, and it is represented by 300 individuals in 3 square kilometer area along the bank of Arabian Sea. There is a plateau at Saukul, and there was a just population of 300 individuals. So I have collected the specimen. I have done the tissue culture micropropagation of Chiropracia Monroe in lab. Then we go for hardening of plants. We have hardened the plants. This Chiropracia is a tuberous genus. It shows tuber. Our hardened plant shows tuber in pot itself. Then we reintroduced these plants in similar habitats like Guhagar, Chiklun, Ratnagiri, Pavas, Ganpati Pule, and all. Then After reintroduction, after 1 year, we visited again the site where we planted or reintroduced the plantlets, and we observed that 65% of plants are surviving over there after 1 year also. Then these plants, they flowered and they fruited in nature. So here you can see fruits of Chiropracia Monroe. This was success story of Chiropracia Monroe. I'm proudly I can say that now there are 5 populations of Chiropracia Monroe along the Konkan region of Maharashtra. This is very interesting story. Then now I am shifted to Jawhar, and this is the campus area of our Gokhale Education Society's educational premises. This is my college, and this entire area of 29 acres is there free for me to plant many plant or do any conservation activities. My principal is also supporting me, and in last 2 years we have developed this aquatic body, or this is a short small pond we have constructed, and with the help of our students and some donors and all. And here at the top of this we have developed our nursery, Jawhar Ecological Centre nursery. And we are, this is a nala, sewage water is flowing over there from here, and we are doing the phytoremediation practice, and this water is percolated over in this dam, and we are using this water for planting or watering purpose of plants. This is somewhat older image. Now there are several plants planted all over here. Nearly 4,500 plantlets we have planted, and we have nearly 100% survival. Now these are 2-3-year-old plants. You may able to see some small pits over there or small bushes over there. These are trees which we have already planted over here. So we are engaged in conservation, and we are know what to conserve little bit. Huh? So now Rishi sir, he met us, and we started our project Jawhar Ecology Centre. And this is the turning point. We were doing just in for ourselves only. We are just conserving plants in our campus area. Rishi sir met us, and he guided us, and then we started to take part in Jawhar Ecological Centre. This is our thrust areas of Jawhar Ecological Centre. Conservation of rare plants. Rare plants means rare, endangered, and threatened plants. We have made a priority list of such plants. We are not taking many more plants for conservation, and it's not possible also, because we are with limited manpower and limited economical sources. So we have just selected Begonia foveolata, Echinocarpus pneumoniae, and Operculina tansensis. These are 3 plants which we have selected, RET plants, rare, endangered, threatened plants. There are only 3 rare, endangered, threatened plants. We are conserving it. These are, they are on the verge of endangered category. They are in endangered category. We have to conserve at priority basis, at urgent basis. They need our support for survival in wild. So Begonia foveolata, Echinocarpus pneumoniae, and Operculina tansensis. Then nursery. Also, we have developed nursery. We will talk about nursery. Then documentation and enrichment of sacred groves, that is Devrai. We are working on documentation and documentation of Devrais. That also we will talk about. Then reduce anthropological pressure on forest. That will also I explain. And we started our activities through public awareness. We are conducting nature trails on every alternate Sunday in vicinity of Jawhar at various places. So in these nature trails, many enthusiastic persons from Jawhar and adjoining area, they join us. some students, they also join us, and we introduce them with the plants, with the birds, with the animals, wildlife, whatever is there in our Jawhar area. We introduce them with some butterflies if they encounter somewhere. So we are started our work with public awareness. Without involvement of public, we cannot go for conservation. We should have public involvement in that. Then and then only movement of conservation will be successful. So I will tell you a story. Before starting this trail, our students, they used to, this is a tribal area. Our students used to kill all the birds, whatever they see in nature. They just kill for, it's their habit. Hunting is their habit. They just kill small birds also for roasting and for their eating purpose. So now I have started to introduce them with several forest birds and wetland birds. Now my students are able to see or able to identify some small birds, forest birds, some bulbuls, some babblers, forest birds basically. Now they are started to learning it. So because of this, I hope some of them will now try to stop killing or hunting of such birds, as they will start liking them, as they will start identifying them. So they are killing randomly. Whenever any bird will come there and they will see, they will kill it. So this is a product of our nature trail. Now I am getting in touch with students, and now they are very much familiar with me. They are now sharing whatever birds they are seeing. We have one group of Nisarg in Jawhar. So they always share some photographs to me, and I will reply them with some identity and some charismatic facts about that plants. So this is what public awareness we have started. We are yet to go far ahead, and we need to reach to community level for conservation. Then major part of our Jawhar Ecological Centre is nursery development. So many people, they ask me why you are developing nursery. Actually, biodiversity loss or threat of biodiversity is over exploitation over here in Jawhar. They just grab anything from nature, or they chop down all the trees for burning in their farms. So for that, we need to give them some alternative things, or we need to give them some alternative plants. Because of that, they will not go for forest. For that, we have made a priority list for conservation of plants, and in that we have taken fruit plants. So there are few fruit plants, there are few fodder plants, there are few timber plants also, which plants will taken by tribals, and they will plant them somewhere at the vicinity of their farms and all. So for reducing the anthropogenic pressure, or for reducing the pressure, biotic pressure on forest plants, we have to develop a nursery, and we have to develop seedlings and distribute them. And one more thing, we are planning to enrich our sacred grooves, that devrais. Here in Marathi, we call it as devrai, sacred grooves. We can introduce such devrais with indigenous and native plants, and we can enrich such devrais. Now they are not in good conditions. Our devrais in Jawhar area, they are not in good conditions. There are devrais in every padas and every villages, but they are not in good condition. We need to restore them. We need to introduce some plants which were present already there sometime before. Now we have to plant such plants over there, and again we have to rejuvenate these devrais, these sacred grooves in Jawhar area. Our tribal people, they believe in God, they strongly believe in God, and they will not disturb any Devrai furthermore for 50 years. So this is a better chance for us to restore our some threatened elements, some rare plants over there, which will be protected naturally on the name of God. So these are our seed collections for nursery. We have collected several seeds, and then these are our plantlets. We started somewhat late at May ending or June, so our plants are not yet ready to distribute or ready to transplant, but they are in growing conditions. We have nearly 1,782, so 1,700 somewhat plantlets we have right now, seedlings we have, and we can distribute them in next 2 months also. So this is what about nursery. Then sacred groves. This is one more concern objective of our Jawhar Ecology Centre, that sacred groves. We have selected some 6 sacred groves at Kasatwadi, at Kalamviri, Vihira, and Shiroshi, Balkapra, then Denga Chimed, and Bursetmed. These are small pockets of 4 or 5 guntas or 10 guntas or somewhat, and they are protected on the name of God. And we will definitely come with documentation or list of entire plant present in sacred groves of these 6 places. So this is from my side. Thank you very much for patient hearing. And this is one more plant, Hypini dichotoma. This is branched palm. Branching is not there in any monocot plant. Monocot. This is monocot plant. There are no branching in monocot, and in palm it is not there, or it is not observed in any other palm. But this is Hypini dichotoma, a rare endangered endemic plant of our Western Ghat. There are only few population of Hypini dichotoma at Divdaman, then Safala, then Alibag, and directly then in Goa. So there are very few plants surviving in sea coast, our Arabian coast. So thank you very much for listening me. Over to you, Desi.
Thank you so much, Avinash sir, for this wonderful presentation. I see that we are already receiving questions, and we'll get back to them at the end of the session during our Q&A round. Moving ahead, I'd like to introduce and invite our next speaker, Mr. Rishi Agarwal. Rishi sir, whenever you are ready.
Yeah, Daisy, I'm ready. I'll just share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So firstly, thank you very much, Daisy and Vikrant, for organizing this session. And it's a pleasure always to listen to Avinash sir. In fact, I was hoping that he would continue for longer and enrich us more with his fantastic knowledge. But I guess we'll have occasion to hear him again. So I'll just take through a journey specifically. I'll repeat some of the points, but I'll try to not repeat all the points. And anyways, in the beginning, I should mention that I'm not a technical expert at all, and that's why whenever I meet people like Dr. Adsul, I'm always enthralled because I love. But my life, mainly for the past more than 20 years, has been more about preserving the landscape. And of course, I love to know more about the landscape and what is there in terms of the species. But as an activist, what generally happens is that you don't end up spending so much of time in the landscapes that you love. And what generally happens is that you're spending more of your time in trying to preserve those landscapes, and that takes you through a very different course of life. It involves more of meeting people rather than meeting trees, etc. So I'll just go through a background. Is the second slide visible? I'm not able to.
Yes, sir, it is.
Yeah, the background slide. So, I mean, Avinash sir has anyways shared the kind of grave scenario that we are facing in terms of the threat to ecology and biodiversity. And I just wanted to kind of stress on it again that forest landscape degradation, especially in India, is a phenomenally grave threat. I mean, till 2 decades, 3 decades back itself, we were very concerned about the rate at which forests is degrading. And by now, it almost seems like a lost cause. I mean, and that's why for me right now, it has become personally more important that I do not keep following news on environmental matters, because all that you hear is very depressing news. And so it's important to keep doing the kind of work we are doing at Jawhar Ecology Centre. Then the second point that, I mean, this is really the core reason. I mean, people think that we need to, there are a lot of people who just don't seem to still appreciate forests and why we should save them. It's not for their beauty. I mean, we should definitely save them for beauty and aesthetics. But they're providing numerous services which are irreplaceable and have economic value. And I would like to stress on the word irreplaceable, because there is a certain arrogance which has now increasingly built up in the human species in the past 2-3 centuries since industrial revolution started, that we can do almost anything in a laboratory, and that we do not need nature, and that somewhere we have overcome our dependence upon nature. We have moved on our own. But that really is not true. I mean, I don't have the liberty of time right now, and somebody like Dr. Adsul would really do justice to the word irreplaceable in terms of the enormous benefits. I mean, just water, if you look at it, and why Jawhar is so fascinating, because in the vicinity of Jawhar, you have places like Tansa, Vetarna, which are supplying 50% of Mumbai's water. There is no way we can set up some large factory which will produce water to supply to a city of 12 million people. We are still dependent upon forest to be able to capture the rain, the monsoon rain, and provide water. So that's just one thing. And there is a definite economic value to the water which is being provided to Mumbai. Forget all the different species diversity and the kind of grass species and other things which Dr. Adsul was taking us through. Somebody might question that, what is the economic value? I won't get into it, but those are the kind of things. Then forests are repositories of biodiversities. I mean, this is home for numerous flora and fauna, and there is just no way. Again, they would not be able to. I mean, Dr. Adsul and so many others are doing brilliant work in terms of genetic propagation, but still, these will not be able to survive only in laboratories. They need forests. And there is an urgent need to identify the key causes of degradation and develop restoration initiatives. And Jawhar Ecology Centre is just one kind of such initiative. I'm just taking you through images of what landscape degradation looks like. These are again images from my first visit to Jawhar, which was in April 2015. And I was pained at seeing this kind of a landscape, because this is outside the protected area. Inside the protected area, it's very beautiful forest. And outside the protected area, the forests are completely decimated by anthropogenic activities. And it's a painful sight that what happens to the landscape. This is another picture which was taken later on. I mean, I'll go into the details of some of the specific factors which are affecting the landscape later. And these are the protected forests as you climb up Jawhar, and they'll be in a very beautiful state right now in the monsoon. And I do wish that everybody who's on this presentation right now would take time out, and we are frequently organizing nature walks and be part of and come and experience the landscape on their own. So about the project, I mean, after my visit in 2015 and 2016, we formed the Jawhar Ecology Centre. And but Jawhar Taluka, the place which we're talking about, it is part of the Palghar district in Maharashtra, and it is a tribal district. It's a scheduled district, which means that it is identified and protected as a space which has a significant tribal presence, and it is important to preserve that culture and heritage, and restricted from the kind of development which we are seeing very close even on the highway. I mean, once urbanization and modern existence moves in, everything is decimated. You have standard concrete buildings, food gets standardized, transport, everything gets standardized. So it's a very protected area. It's part of the Western Ghats, and it has significant forest cover. And the Western Ghats has been known as a World Heritage Site. I mean, in terms of the biodiversity and species richness, it's unparalleled. Uh, and landscape and forest degradation has been underway for a long time in this in Palghar district itself. I mean, thankfully, Jawhar is slightly hilly, but as you move towards the sea, you see a lot of industrial parks coming up. The bullet train is going to be passing through that section, highways, transmission lines. It's completely kind of disturbed on that side. And so this is the project, and it was Jawhar Ecology Centre was developed and to reduce the impact from human activities and carry out afforestation as required. And as required is the important word over here, because in the past 4 to 5 years, we are seeing this kind of a mad rush around the world that planting trees will save us from climate change. And there are completely mindless afforestation and tree planting activities without an understanding. And Avinash sir was pointing out to that fact in his this thing. So we need to do afforestation as required, but primarily the work is to reduce impact from human activities. Now, these are the three primary causes of degradation of the landscape in Jawhar and Gokhale and the surrounding areas. There is this agricultural practice called RAB. And this is a photograph which was taken in April, month of April. You will notice that all these beautiful trees, and there are such beautiful trees in Jawhar, all the foliage has been completely cut, and all that foliage has been cut and spread on the farm below. You will see that there is ash over there. And there is a belief that burning this foliage will kill the weeds in the ground, and also the ash will provide fertilizer. But in this process, entire hundreds of trees, thousands of trees are completely disturbed. Their foliage, which is a nesting ground for birds and other species, is disturbed before the monsoon. And it takes time for the tree to recover from it. And by the time it is recovered, there is another round of cutting of foliage. And we had met Mr. Patil also over there, who's working with what's that organization? I forgot. And Avinash Sir has also pointed out again and again that it is very well proven, and there has been training carried out that RAB is not really required, and you can achieve better equal good productivity by other means also. And I'm not talking about chemical fertilizers. So RAB is a big disturbance on the landscape. And next is firewood. I mean, firewood is a massive uh, disturbance on the landscape. There are almost 200 hamlets or padas in Jawhar alone. That is what we had been researching. And 200 of these padas have almost 50 families. And each family is using roughly 10 kgs of firewood every day. Now, this is all from calculations we had carried out at that time. And if you do the back of the envelope calculations, then I think almost 1 lakh kgs of firewood is used per day. And we might be wrong, but even if we are wrong, it would be at least 50,000 kgs of firewood being consumed every day. and that places a big pressure on the forest. And as you will see in the subsequent image I'm trying to show, these are the villagers who are going out to cut forests, and this is a daily requirement. And you have to figure out how to reduce it. But I think in the past 3 years, the penetration of LPG cylinders is growing significantly. But there is no accurate study being carried out. And also, as I must mention at this stage that immediately after I founded the project, the Jawhar Ecology Centre, we faced a very big financial crunch. It was a new NGO. And thankfully, it's only in 2021, last year, exactly the same time, that we were able to revive the project due to generous funding from Chirag Kathrani, who's the founder of Nisarg Foundation. And he's been generously supporting this and other initiatives. So in 2021, we also, I must mention that Chirag is also an alumni of Gokhale Education Society, since Avinash sir is teaching at Jawhar College, which is founded. So in a sense, Chirag is an alumni. And this is also an example of how alumni can do so much, contribute back to the society. So we started the project in 2021. We were extremely lucky through another contact, Mr. Santosh Mahajan, to be introduced to Manoj Kamadi. And Manoj is also on the call, and hopefully later on he can also take some questions. And Manoj joined since January 22, and this is when we have picked up activities. It is thanks to Manoj that we got introduced, that wonderful introduction to Avinash sir and Professor Meshram, Dr. Meshram, who's the principal of Jawhar College. And because of their generosity and interest, and both are from the botany field, so they immediately related to the project, and the college gave a small plot of land for setting up a nursery, which is the first of its kind in that whole area, and where we are talking of the RET species. And then we are also carrying out research into issues facing the Padas, which is water, firewood collection, etc. We are also, thankfully, I mean, it's just amazing being in Jawhar that this is one of the few places which has a culture of Devrais, the sacred groves. And we are trying to see how that can be researched on and protected. As part of the center, there are nature walks being organized, and there is a focus on waste management. So this is again a photograph and of the nursery, and we are really happy. And I think Avinash sir has already shared all the details of the nursery. I won't get into the species. There are around 2,000 saplings right now over there. Those saplings will help us. I must mention that we're not intending to plant those saplings only in forest. One segment of trees over there are trees which have very good firewood potential. So our intention is that we will start planting these next to the padas, so that after 10, 15, 20 years, when firewood is required, you have these kind as a burst off, so that people don't need to go to the forest. These are just images from the nature trails. It's a pleasure to listen to Avinash sir in the field as much as it is on the online, but I think it's much more of a pleasure to listen to him in person. He's a wealth of knowledge, and I think all the participants benefit enormously. And different seasons bring different stories and knowledge to be shared. On the right is a photograph from the Kasatwadi Sacred Grove, and that's another very, very beautiful and fascinating place. Below is participants in the nature trail that is frequently held. And so in a space of 1 year, thanks to support from Chirag Nisarg Foundation, we've been able to revise the Jawhar Ecology Centre. And again, eco-restoration activities are some things which you cannot carry out as a quick fix. It's not a simple thing like, okay, we'll go and plant 100 trees. Eco-restoration has to be carried out over 1 decade, 2 decades. It involves a huge amount of technical research, monitoring, I don't think we've still reached that stage. It's still a very amateur effort. It was not initiated by the government. It was not initiated by a big, well-funded NGO. So I just hope in the coming years we'll be able to do justice to to our ambition levels and to the goals that we have taken up. I think that is all to share right now. I hope I was audible and it was helpful in some way. I couldn't copy the handles over here, but hopefully Priyanka or Manoj can share the handles in the chat. And I forgot to mention that we have Priyanka also over here, and between Priyanka and Manoj, it's really been fascinating collaboration over the past 6 months, because due to number of personal reasons, I have unfortunately not been able to get involved so actively. So I hope that during the Q&A, they can both also join the discussion and answer any queries. So thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Daisy.
Thank you so much, Rishi sir. It was an amazing presentation, and I'm sure our listeners, our participants have had an amazing time listening to you and Dr. Avinash. So we are now open to take questions. We have already received a question from Ajit. So Ajit, would you like to repeat your question by unmuting yourself so that our guest can answer to your question?
Hello.
Yes. Hi, Ajit.
Yeah, hi. Good evening, Rishi sir, and good evening, Avinash sir. Good evening, Bikran sir as well. So, Nisarg team, thank you so much for first of all conducting this webinar about the conservation of biodiversity and restoration of ecology. So it was really an amazing session till now. I am really inspired by what actually Avinash sir and Rishi sir is doing about the Jawhar Ecological Centre. My question is as Avinash sir actually told about the biodiversity in the initial presentation. So my question is, how can we take this up for a mass scale as far as our biodiversity is concerned, and then we can spread to different other locations in our country, and by protecting our environment.
Thank you, Ajit Kumar. It was nice question. Biodiversity conservation is not instant result giving process. We need to work for 10 to 20 years, then you will get some results, or you can show some results. You cannot show in 2-3 years or on. So for mass scale conservation, we need to involve the policymakers, and we need to have their positive approach toward the biodiversity conservation. Yes, as you said, that we can establish such ecological centers all over or wherever there is requirement. Means there are two biodiversity hotspot in India, that is Eastern Himalaya and Western Ghats. So here, at least in Western Ghat, we can develop, or we should develop, such ecological centers in particular patches or particular areas where there is urgent need of conservation. There are many people who are doing this same business, but still we need to have more people involvement, more involvement of community for mass scale conservation. Rishi sir, you can elaborate whatever I left.
Yes, Ajit, thank you very much for your appreciation, and I'm glad that you found the presentations of value. And I think your question is very pertinent, and that is a question which I think concerns all of us. And right in the beginning, I began when I started speaking, that I stopped following most environmental news now, because it makes for very depressing reading, and at the rate at which we are losing forests. So your question becomes even more important, because we are not matching the rate at which we are destroying. Our rate at which we are saving is not even maybe 5%. I think if you're destroying at 100%, we are just saving at 5%. So still there is a gap of 95%. And I think my answer to that is that we need more people to take up initiatives similar to this. So if somebody is staying, say, in Madhya Pradesh and they see a place like Jawhar and they say that, okay, we will take up this particular taluka's conservation. But having said that, it is not easy. I know the amount of difficulty. I mean, I've had a lifelong difficulty with my own family in terms of family members wondering why I'm wasting my life on these non-conventional career choices. And if imagine if there is a big corporate group which is doing mining in Chhattisgarh, then there is a distinct. I mean, everybody is very happy with them. Their praises. Shareholders are very happy because everybody feels that it will add to the value of the company and there is an economic this thing. But when you try to save that same forest, there is really no business model, so to say. And I'm just copying a news which I read in the morning in the chat, and I'm capturing it for everybody. But just to share over here, the news which I shared was that there is a popular, the Hrithik Roshan, popular Bollywood actor. And the news in the morning which I read was, of course, first that he is vacationing in France with his girlfriend. And second is that there are cumulatively 4 movies worth 850 crores of his, which are going to come out in this year. And the first thing which keeps coming to my mind in all this is, and Bollywood is my pet punching bag, that 850 crores. I mean, right now, Jawhar Ecology Centre, I think we are operating on a budget of maybe 20 lakhs, 25 lakhs per annum. And for 4 movies, so we know that our priority is in entertainment, and we are willing to allocate 1,000 crore budgets for entertainment, but we're not allocating. And these are life-giving forests. You're not going to get life out of watching another Hrithik Roshan film. But like I mentioned, that Mumbai is getting water for 12 million people only because of the forests. And if I look at the whole conservation industry arising out of Mumbai, the budget will not even reach 10 or 15 crores, which means the amount of people we employ, the salaries we pay, everything. So it is a very sad state of society right now. And I think unless we don't increase funding for eco-restoration activities, that will create space for in the talks with Dr. Avinash Adsul, I've met so many brilliant students of his. I mean, how do we create jobs for these students? These students can all be employed as eco-restoration experts or eco-restoration managers in different sites. But there is no budget. All the budget is for Hrithik. So I don't want to spend more time on Hrithik right now.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's
I
my
got.
answer to your question. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's a fact actually. Yeah, as you actually explained all these things. So we need to be actually indulged towards this kind of activities rather than actually what's running behind all those entertainment kind of. That is a fact actually. So thank you so much.
Yeah, hopefully
Thank you
we'll be
so
in
much,
touch and
Arvind.
later on. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to. Thank you.
Sure. Moving ahead, I think we have another question by Agbabito Koku Selam. Would you please unmute yourself and let us know your question? Hello, Mr. Selam. Would you like to unmute yourself and please let us know your question? Or you can also type it in the chat box. I will read it out to our guest speakers.
Okay, excuse me. Actually, you hear me now?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, as I said it, so you must apologize me because I am from French-spoken country. So I am the responsible of NDO Avesh, based in Togo in West Africa. So I have followed with attention the presenters about the Jawhar project. So I think it is one case study or good practices about this centers, this center. So I think one of the view of this center is to reduce the human pressure impact on the biodiversity or by the ecology. Then, if you know that people need to survive through the forest, for instance, or because they want they want some of their needs through forest, like firewood, like medicinal plants or something like that. All we need from forest for survival. Now, what kind of strategies or approaches of solution they can give to people not to disturb or to disturb this ecology or this biodiversity, in order to keep all the system really equal? This is my question. What can people may do about by restore this ecology, or by conserve this biodiversity, if we need this of biodiversity, or this is ecology like a forest to survive? What can we do really, like approaches? Because we need to make our agricultures, we want to make everything we need through this forest. So this is my little reflection, and if they can give me some alternative, like activities in other that human cannot disturb the biodiversity and have the pressure on ecology, so that would be nice for me. Thank you. This is my little question. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your question. I request our guests to kindly address it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your question. Maybe Adsul sir also would have something to add, but I'll just quickly add 3 points. Firstly, thank you very much. I think it's a pleasure to hear somebody from Africa also joining in the presentation. So as I understood your question, what are the alternatives that we can give to people? Because these are medicinal plants, firewood are real needs. And so I couldn't elaborate maybe in the presentation, but like for firewood, if we can provide them with LPG, and I mentioned that almost 1 lakh kgs of firewood is being collected every day. And if we can give them LPGs, gas cylinders, then that as a source of fuel for household cooking. Second, I missed the grazing part. There is a lot of cows and goats, and during the non-rainy season, these are left into the forest and the fields to do grazing, and that can cause a lot of damage also to the landscape. So we can have stall feeding, where you're growing fodder either through hydroponics or other methods, and you're providing fodder, and that way you will also save the energy of the cattle, because a lot of times they have to roam large area because there is very little fodder left or grass left on the landscape. So that is there. Also, I mean, the farming practices you can work. It's not easy at all, because a lot of people have been trying to do that, but habits are very difficult to break. So RAB is still being carried out. And again, the overarching thing is that there are a lot of government departments and schemes for these kind of activities, and those need to be used. I mean, there is just 3 days back, I was reading some discussion on compensatory. There is a program called CAMPA, Compensatory Afforestation Management Program, where a huge amount of money is accumulated. And I think funds of CAMPA, etc., should be used. And this is where also the role of people like us comes in. We are also trying to do advocacy with forest department and other departments, that those funds should be used for made available for these kind of activities. So that's my contribution. I hope I answered your question, but if you have anything else, I'll be happy to go a bit further.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. So do we have any more questions? If you do, please feel free to write it in the chat box, or you could also unmute yourself and directly ask our speakers.
Also, if Manoj can, Manoj, अपना camera on कर लो, so that people can see you.
So I see there's another hand that has been raised.
Hello.
So
Hi, ma'am.
hello
Hello,
Manoj, I
Manoj.
hope you're doing good.
प्रियंका is left award. प्रियंका नहीं है क्या? मनोज, अब क्या चल रहा है वहाँ पे? अभी थोड़ा सा अपडेट तुमको देना है, तुम भी एक अपडेट दे दो.
बारिश का सीजन चालू है और उधर अभी नर्सरी में काम चालू है सर, प्लांटेशन नए पेड़ लगाने का जो घर में मिलता है. हेलो.
Yes, Manoj.
चलो अच्छा है बहुत.
और सफाई बैंक का भी चालू है सर.
वेरी गुड, वेरी गुड. चलो अच्छा है. डेजी, कुछ एक और क्वेश्चन भी था. देयर वाज वन मोर क्वेश्चन.
Yes, I see Shashvi Kadikar has raised her hand. Would you please unmute yourself and let us know your question? Hi Shashvi, please unmute yourself to ask the question. Or you can also type it in the chat box. Okay, you're unable to unmute. It's okay. You can type it over the chat box. I'll read it out loud.
She can type a question also in the chat.
Yes, I think she's doing that.
I think Deji, you can also unmute her. You have the access.
I did, but somehow it's not doing anything.
Okay.
So Shashavi says that this is Rohit and Shashavi and they work for Devrai Foundation in Pune. I've actually tried to unmute you, but somehow even I'm unable to do that. You can type your question here, it's fine. I'll read it out loud.
I think it's a pleasure. I think great that you're working with the Devrai Foundation. I mean, if she can unmute herself and then we can have a good conversation with her. We have Tukaram also on the call. Nice. Hi, Tukaram. Tukaram, knowledge is he's very knowledgeable on all the local flora.
In the meantime, as Shashavi types her question, is there anyone else who'd like to unmute themselves and ask questions? If yes, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. All right. So Rishi sir, we have another question from Mr. Selom. He is asking, is Jawhar Center project is private scientific project for research, or is it the local community project?
Uh, yeah, good question. It is basically right now a project under Mumbai Sustainability Centre, which is a NGO. It is a Section 8 company, and so it has started not, it is not in situ in a sense, it's not grown from the community. Somebody from Mumbai came, started it, and but now the whole idea is to make it as much community, and that's why we have the local coordinator who's from the local community, and we are trying to create, implement locally also, because unless the local community does not own it, it will not succeed. So we are increasingly trying to see how we can. For me, unfortunately, I don't speak the local language Marathi, but also I am not so comfortable in Hindi, and that's why my predominant, whenever I'm making a presentation, I'm speaking in English. But there is no way on the ground over there we can work in English. It has to be local language, local people, and so it's only external impetus, but we are trying to make it into a local community project.
I hope that answers your question, Mr. Selom. Anyone else would like to raise a question?
Avinash sir has anything more to add, then it will be pleasure to listen to his inputs also.
No, sir. I like to answer Selom sir's question. He was saying that how can we, uh, he asked a very nice question. So sustainable development, what he wanted to say that for sustainable development, we should have concrete policies. Means he was telling that people need medicinal plants, people need some fuel wood. How can we deny them? And it is a difficult practice. Over here also in Jawhar, if you go to some farmer and tell him that I will give you money and you don't go for rob, cutting and chopping all the trees and burning them on farm soil. So they will not agree with that. For such sustainable development, we are dependent on natural resources, definitely, but we should know what to use and at what extent we should exploit the natural resources. And for that, people like us or people like you can create awareness among your policymakers and create a concrete plan for next 2 decades for conservation of biodiversity at your area. So here in our area, we are conserving Western Ghats. There is a nice report made by Dr. Madhav Gadgil, who elaborates that which are some places where you cannot go for any development activity or you cannot collect anything from such places. So he made some places as very sensitive areas, hotspots, and he selected there are some places where you can go for development or partial development also. Like that, you should have policies in your area where you can concretely put some rules and regulation for extensive use of biological resources. So you cannot stop permanently or you cannot minimize or zero your utilization of biological resources. You have to be dependent on that, but you should use um, substitute resources, or if you need some plant for like diarrhea, you can go for some vulnerable plants or some common plants for treatment of diarrhea instead of going to some rare endangered, critically endangered plants. So this is how you should have policies or rules for sustainable development. Unless and until you will put some rules, people will exploit everything. So I hope what I wanted to convey you might have received it.
Thank you, Avinash, sir. So we have another question from Sheshavi and Rohit from Devrai Foundation in Pune. Their question is that there is a lot of defense land in India. It is protected as well in addition to forest land. Can we help people with 2-4 acres of land with plantation? At Devrai, we often get people with 2 to 4 acres of land. Also, we collect a lot of seeds of native plants and we can donate the seeds if required. Also, can we involve defense areas and defense land in the afforestation programs?
We will be happy to receive seeds from you. We are collecting seeds from our area also. Still, we are not able to collect at large scale because our people, they chop down all the trees and there will be rarely fruiting, and we will have very less amount of seeds. So if you can spare some seeds with some native plants, actually we are with priority list. We are propagating plants which are useful to human beings, like fuel wood plants, some fodder plants, some fruit plants, some plants for some frugivorous birds, the birds which are dependent on fruits also. So this is our priority list. If you can spare some seeds, share some seeds with us, it will be great for us.
Grace, I think I'll also just add to that. I'll just go point by point. One is that you mentioned 2 to 4 acres of land. So last year in July, same time, we were trying to identify people within the padas, and we went to one place called Karol Pada first, where we thought that people could give us private land or community land, 1 acre, 2 acre, whatever, half an acre also. And there are two methods. One was we wanted to do natural regeneration, where we just fence off 1 acre of land and we don't let any grazing or human presence into it. No cutting of trees, collecting of fodder, no rab. And then over a period of 2-3 monsoons, we felt that it would naturally regenerate. We don't even need to throw in seeds because nature on its own will decide what can grow on that piece of land. There'll be birds which are coming and they'll drop their excreta and there'll be seeds in that. And there are various other ways in which surrounding ecology landscape will start taking over that 1 acre piece of land. So that was one approach. The other approach was then to work with experts like Avinash sir and others and identify what we can plant. My personal favorite is natural regeneration, but we need to do planting also. So we are right now even in Jawhar in the process. Like we said, there are 200 padas over there. Now, if each pada could give 1 acre, 2 acre of land, then we could create 200 acres of new protected areas immediately. But getting land is very difficult. And like we realized last year in July that the person, he said yes, and then later on he said no. So right now we are trying to make a beginning with forest department, because forest department, like you've correctly mentioned, defense has a lot of land, but forest department also has a lot of land, and not all of the land with forest department has forest on top of it. There's a lot of degraded land also with the forest department. So we are trying to see if forest department can give us these pockets of land. And I think that is how we are working. And it'll be great to collaborate with you also in the future. If you would like to visit, that'd be great if you can come to Jawhar. And we'll see. I mean, as far as seeds go, I think Avinash sir is the best judge which other seeds we can take, local species and other things.
So thank you, Sheshavi and Rohit, and thank you for willing to donate seeds to different projects being held near Pune. Even Nisarg Foundation is planning on starting a project in Nashik Dari where we'll be restoring 100 acres of land. So we would be very happy if you could also help us with seeds, as we'll be requiring seeds for the restoration purpose. And we would also love to reach out to you later after this webinar to discuss more if you're available. And having said that, I'm assuming that we have no further questions. If we do, please feel free to ask it right now because we are about to wrap up our session as we've already exhausted the time limit of the webinar. So if you have questions, please feel free to unmute yourself now, or else we'll be concluding the webinar. So I see there are no more questions. Thank you everyone for your time and your consideration for joining us today. First of all, I'd like to thank our speakers, Dr. Avinash Adsul sir and Rishi sir, for your wonderful presentation and your time. I'm sure our listeners have had an amazing time and they were very interested and have come up with different questions. And thank you everyone. And to our participants, we really appreciate all of your efforts in being in this webinar today. As promised by us, we are willing to distribute a digital certificate of participants to all the participants who have stayed till the end of the session. And we've also shared a Google Doc form in the chat. So please feel free, make sure to fill it out so that we can distribute the certificates after this webinar. And thank you again, everyone. Hopefully, we'll see you again in our upcoming webinar sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Daisy and everybody. Thank you.